Check, check. Good evening, everybody. How are you? It's good to see y'all here. There is still a weird lag going on the system, and I'm not quite sure what that's about. So if you can't see me right now, that's because of the lag. Now, if you can see me, the thing is, I can't see myself. I can't even see you guys' comments yet. Wait a minute. Here we go. Now I got it. I see that Angel Monique is here. I see myself back to the stream. Let's see if we can get this all straightened out, y'all. Thank you for your patience about that. Boom. Here we go. I think now we're a little bit closer to something that looks like right. All right, all right. Good evening once again. It is good to see Angel Monique. It's good to see Erica Yolita. It's good to see Kamisha Umstead. I see that Judy Lee is here. I see us. Um, I see Ms. Ebony Martin is here and Issa Marie is here. All right, cool. I'm starting to get you guys. Now my mouse is not cooperating. This is and it's crazy because I ran all my tests. I did everything that I was supposed to do before the show. But it's sometimes your technology gets a rebellious spirit. You know what I'm talking about? So let's go ahead and jump into it and let's talk about that. Let's talk about rebellious spirits. So for those of you all who pay attention to the episode guidelines, I'm trying to make sure my camera angles a little bit better. So to those of you who pay attention to the episode guidelines, the little episode descriptions, we this episode is called "The Only Insurrection We Recognize is Scott's." Rion Amilcar Scott, friend of the show, phenomenal author. We featured his work a number of times. He was one of the two authors involved in the inaugural wordplay. That was him and him and Nana Kwame Ajebrenya, and Rion brought the heat and the slick talk all through the day. Which was hilarious, and it was just really overall just a really good time. His first book, published by Kentucky University Press, is called Insurrections. And Insurrections is the book wherein Rion creates the world around the city of, or the town of Cross River. Cross River is a town that, in the days of, it's a fictional town that in the days of slavery had had an insurrection, and the enslaved peoples, the formerly enslaved peoples, won. And they took that town, and the stories that come throughout the book Insurrections and that continue and persist in The World Does Not Require You are stories of this town full of Black folk who are the descendants of, effectively, the descendants of an uprising. Now, why am I reading this? Well, it's kind of obvious, right? It's kind of obvious in these current times why it would be important to me to bring this book up. Now, I had actually ordered a hardbound copy of this book and it never came. So I was looking around for my copy and I was like, wait a minute, it's not here. Where is it? And realized that I didn't have it. So I had to order a digital copy to read for tonight. Now, when I read from digital copies, I don't have the same pagination. So I'm not able to estimate the length. So we're going to see how we do. But I'm asking you to stick around for the whole thing, even if we do run a little bit over. Now, Rion knows that we're going to be reading uh, his stories tonight, and I think he might swing by. That doesn't mean that he'll necessarily be available to do a Q&A, but we can hope, right? We can cross our fingers on that one. But the only insurrections we recognize as Scots. Now, that's not entirely true. Historically, there are other insurrections that we recognize. But in this right now moment, this despicable act of violent political theater that we saw unfold on the Capitol last week. It wasn't an insurrection. Now, at first, I embraced the term insurrection as a descriptor for it, and I'll tell you why, and it's probably pretty obvious why. Insurrection made sense because it had it had the gravity to it. It had the weight to it that suggested this is something worthy of significant punishment. It certainly wasn't a protest. Certainly wasn't that. This was, by the technical definition of insurrection, which is an uprising, a violent uprising against a government or authority. This was that and deserves to be punished as such. But that's really only the bare minimum behind what we should be thinking of when we think of an insurrection. That is the textbook definition. But we live in a world where words have meanings beyond what the dictionary and the textbook says. And the weight and the gravity that comes with a word like insurrection is too significant for what these costumed, marauding, petulant, violent white people were doing. They were acting out in the most vile and violent and despicable ways, without question. We're not questioning that part. But there was no sense of an agenda other than I want to get my way. There was no sense of an agenda to actually create or craft a new government. In fact, they weren't really even uprising against the entire government. Our government is a little bit complicated with these three co-equal branches of power. It's kind of hard to have an insurrection against all of it when you're only mad at part of it. Also, they were carrying around the flag of this nation and they were chanting USA, USA. So, in addition to wearing wrestling costumes, yes, and superhero costumes, also seen, and one guy was in a fucking toga, in addition to bringing that kind of absurd theater to it, they were also still trying to embrace and hold on to the very thing that the word insurrection would suggest that they were trying to topple. So, this wasn't that. If we had a word stronger than tantrum, maybe we could apply that to it. Something with more weight than tantrum, but it really had all the political seriousness of a tantrum. Because these were not people who were being in any way, shape, or form oppressed. And make no mistake, they know that. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking, well, if they really believed that they were seeing a false leader installed, then they would know. I saw someone, a white woman, say that on my timeline. She is no longer a friend. That was an easy unfriend. Because there was nothing, there is nothing about this that suggests that they actually believe it. But they want to create a reality other than the one that is. Because they're dissatisfied that they didn't get their way. Now, a real insurrection is again, in the sense of the meaning, the lowercase m meaning of the word, not the definition, but the meaning of it. A real insurrection would be one where a source of power or authority is upended and overturned. Now, in order for it to be overturned, it has to be on top of something. So the thing that's on the bottom has to flip and turn it over. That's the way I'm looking at it. And right now, these are not the people that are on the bottom. They were well funded. They were certainly well protected. We have seen the phrase, the complexion for the protection, bandied about. So what they did and what we would want to call an insurrection, two different things. Now, the things that you and I, what we might identify as insurrections are given other labels. In modern times, they're more often than not called riots. Every once in a while, they'll be called protests. In the past, they were most frequently referred to as a rebellion. Nat Turner's Slave Rebellion. Rebellion's an interesting word because we do not ascribe any particular kindness to the idea of rebellion. Rebellions are to be quashed because that is someone with a rebellious spirit. Rebellion doesn't have the righteousness behind it that even a word like insurrection portends. These people who were on the Capitol, they acted rebellious, like a teenager acts rebellious. It doesn't mean that they weren't coordinated, doesn't mean that there wasn't some real serious danger there. Oh, there absolutely was. There was some real serious danger there, but insurrection gives them too much credit. Insurrection suggests that this was indeed an intentional and righteously political act, when what it was, I think Benyel Wilson says it best, it was a hissy fit. It was a violent, disgusting hissy fit. But Rion Amilcar Scott, he writes a collection of stories where there was an insurrection. And he says, if you follow him on Twitter, and you should, he says that he is an insurrectionist. Now, this is a dangerous time to have something like that on your on your public facing profile. And for those who don't know who he is, that might read for them the wrong way. So we are going to give that some context tonight. The first story that I'm going to read from Insurrections is called Juba. Now, these are, if you've read the disclaimer, you know that what we do on this program is a cold read. We don't read the stories before we read them here. So this is brand new to me, just like it's brand new to you. Um, I skim through them. Now I picked this one first. I see that Rion is with us tonight, and he says, "Well, I can tell you what he says, or I can show you." He says, and he ain't took that shit down neither, and he shouldn't, because people need to find out who he is, and if they want to find out what it means when he says he's an insurrectionist, I think they'll get an important education. Rion, since we know that you're here and it's so good to see you, let me know if you're willing to swing by at the end of the read for a little bit of a Q&A with the people. You know they love to see you. I can email you a login code so that you can be in the green room, and we can, split the screen up and chop it up later on if you're so inclined. Just shoot me a note and let me know, or actually shoot Rose Renee a note and let me know, and she'll text me. We'll get it. We'll get the information to you. All right, but we're going to start with Juba. Now, Juba looks like it's short enough that I can do this and the second story that we want to read tonight, which is 3 Insurrections. But here we go, starting with Juba. The man walking toward me stretched his hand out as we crossed the street. I shook it and kept walking, as I had never seen him before. "Juba," he said. "Boy, Juba, I ain't seen you in a long time, Juba. Woo-wee." Because my name is not Juba, I was content to keep moving. The man stopped right in the middle of busy Carroll Street, still gripping my hand. A money green Acura turned sharply in front of us. I dipped and jerked to avoid being struck. "Are you crazy?" I asked as we made it to the sidewalk. "Sorry, Juba, man. It's just that I ain't seen you in so long. It's good to see you, man. You still up to your old tricks?" I had an idea of what sort of tricks he might be talking about. The man looked old, but it was an artificial old. The kind of old that seizes a person who abuses himself. That sort of old comes from too many late nights. The old of hard liquor and worse. He was scarred in the face and on the arms, but also on his wrinkled hands. He wasn't the sort of man you saw around here very often. "I'm sorry, buddy," I said, "but I'm not Juba." "Stop messing around, Juba. You always was a trickster. Stop playing games, man. You still hustling?" "Sir, I'm hustling to catch this bus. Other than that, I don't hustle, and I really have to go." I really did have to go. I had a job interview at an accounting firm downtown in an hour, and I had timed everything perfectly. If I caught the 12:45 p.m. B58, I would make it there exactly 15 minutes early. I had performed a test run the day before and another the day before that. This was my second interview, and I could tell the woman who ran the office liked me. All I had to do was show up. Since the layoff, I had been out of work for several months. In another couple weeks, my unemployment checks would be at an end. There was something odd in this man's smile, perhaps something in the webs of wrinkles at his cheeks. "Juba, you something else, boy." The man let out a wheezy, whining squeal. "Man, I'm trying to buy a dub. Can you help me out with that? A dub? Yeah, a dub. Remember when you used to be selling nicks down by the River Hall? But then one day you said since times is hard, his dubs are better. I have no idea what you're talking about, I said. I think you have the wrong person. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a $5 bill. Here, buddy, I said. Go get yourself a sandwich or coffee. The man stared at my hand, curling his lip in disgust. Man, I don't need your money, he said. I'm trying to buy some green. I turned and started to walk when the man grabbed at my elbow. Hey, Juba, man, he said. Stop playing games, all right? I thought I heard his voice change. I snatched my arm from him and nearly tumbled backward, but I caught myself. I hadn't been in a fistfight since I was a young man at District Central, mixing it up with guys from the South Side who thought I was a punk because I lived on the North Side. I wondered if I remember even how to fight. I balled my fist and stepped backward a bit. He was a big guy, and his hands seemed built for strangulation. I used to be so skinny back then, nearly frail. In college, I lifted weights to give myself some definition, but it didn't work, so I stopped. It was important not to get wrapped in his massive arms because then I'd never break free. I had to strike first, and then strike again, and keep moving if I had any chance. All that was jumping the gun, though. I had no intention of getting into a fight. He appeared to be looking over my shoulder. I glanced back to see 3 men approaching me with guns drawn. Confused, I raised my hands over my head. They wore badges around their necks and light black jackets. There was one to my left with a puffy pink face and a brown mustache. He appeared tense. I looked from man to man quickly, disoriented by their shouting. I put my hands out in front of me, but I wasn't sure if that was what I was supposed to do. They kept calling me Juba. All I had to do was explain that I didn't know this man and that our very conversation was a simple misunderstanding. If only they would stop shouting. Juba, get down on your knees and put your hands to your head, the man with the puffy pink face said. I am not Juba. I screamed it as loudly as I could. You can check my ID. My name is not Juba. I became aware of each and every one of my movements, each individual heartbeat and blink. I slowly moved my arms to reach for my pocket where my IDs were, but that seemed to make them more agitated. They screamed at me, and I could barely understand them. I looked over at the man who had started all this confusion. They didn't seem to be troubling him. It dawned on me. He was with them. Perhaps an undercover or a neighborhood snitch. I fell to my knees as they asked. The officer with the brown mustache shoved me face down so that my cheek pressed flat against the sidewalk. One of them wrenched my arms together behind my back and pinched cuffs tightly around my wrists. For some reason, even with all my attention on my movements, both involuntary and otherwise, I didn't realize that I had been yelling, screaming all along, I am not Juba! I am not Juba! I am not Juba! They had been telling me to shut up, but I kept screaming, I am not Juba! As I lay there on the ground. I suppose I had said it so much that it lost all meaning. It was the truth, though. I am not Juba. They didn't release me from the police station until after midnight. All I got was a half-hearted apology from some detective who remained unconvinced that I wasn't Juba. They showed me photographs of myself leaving my condo, driving, going to catch the bus, and meeting with family members on the South Side. One officer slid me a cup of coffee after it was established that I wasn't Juba. He told me to watch my back because Juba was still out there. I had only a vague sense of what he meant, but they had to let me go as there was no evidence that I was Juba. Still, no one told me who Juba was, or what Juba was supposed to have done. For all I knew, I was uncomfortably close to lying strapped to a gurney with chemicals streaming into my veins. I called the accounting firm in the morning to explain my absence. The office manager told me she was sorry, but they filled the position when I didn't show. She asked why I didn't call, and I couldn't make up something fast enough. I turned off the telephone and threw it across the living room of my condo. It slapped against the wall and nicked it. I thought about suing. I invited my cousin over for a drink that night. He was a few years older than me and ran a private law firm downtown. I would have offered to go to dinner, or at least a happy hour or something, but thanks to the CRPD, I was still unemployed. My cousin always made an impression. He stood tall as a professional basketball player and had the sturdy build of one. Women seemed to like him. Guys wanted to hang around him. I wanted to hang around him, but I was always too broke to keep up. When he came to my door, he wore a sports jacket over a white shirt with thin brown vertical lines and a stiff collar. He slapped my hand and held it firmly. He slapped my hand and held it firmly, pulling me into him and embracing me tightly. My cousin often went overboard with his handshakes and hugs. It was like something out of the 70s. Cousin, he said, sitting on my couch. I haven't been here in such a long time. I've been meaning to come see you. Yeah, I replied. Man, you look like you're here for a job interview. Just trying to look as fly as my cousin. Speaking of job interviews, what happened to the one you were supposed to have by the place near my office? Man, I said, and paused briefly. We'll get to that one. He nodded, peering down at me quizzically. I didn't want to seem as if I'd just called him to do me a favor, so I led the discussion to any number of things, from politics to his cases to family, the normal topics people usually talked round and round. Listen, Jack, I said, you'll never guess what happened to me. I got arrested, man. What? I told you stop going to those grimy South Side road clubs, man. Don't nobody go to the Garden no more anyway. I got some clients trying to get some of them dirty buildings torn down so we can get some condos up. These fools cost me a job, I said, cutting off my cousin's ramble. Kept me locked up all day. I missed my damn interview. That's terrible, my cousin said. I wasn't doing anything. You know how often I hear people say that? You had to be doing something. I was walking down the street, and then I get accused of being someone named Juba. Juba? I heard a hint of fear in my cousin's voice. They actually called you Juba? Yeah. Did you have any marijuana on you? What? Weed, cousin. When they busted you, did you have any weed on you? Course not. What are you getting at? Did they charge you with anything? No, but I'm thinking about suing. They cost me a great job. This damn condo's not cheap. Look, I think you should drop this whole thing. You free. No one thinks you're Juba. Thank God. Let it go. I'm not letting shit go. I didn't realize it, but I had raised my voice. My cousin jerked back, somewhat rattled, I think. I softened a bit. I had everything planned to the second, I said. I was going to arrive early and make small talk with the secretary so I could look all witty and charming and shit. Then I was going to spend my wait time reading so I could look sophisticated when the executives passed. After that, I was going to sail right into the position. Now all of that is ruined, man. Blame Juba. Who's Juba anyway? You sounded like him for a minute, yelling like a crazy man, my cousin said. Juba is bad news, bad news. Well, cuz, yeah, he has been for me. Well, cuz, he's a phantom, a convenient explanation. Juba may not exist, but the cops in Cross River are convinced he does, and they plan on locking his ass up. They've been prowling the city for a while looking for this dude. I'm starting to think he's an underworld myth, an urban legend, Juba. What did he do? He sold enough weed to keep half the country high. The war on drugs is just a war on Juba. My cousin slapped his knee when he said this. He's Tony Montana, my cousin continued. The Medine cartel, John Gotti, and Black Caesar in one. It's hell up in Cross River, boy. Juba's one bad nigga. He supplies the Washington, Johnson, and Jackson crime families, and he got them all going to war over his product. Do you know how many folks are dead behind Juba? And they think I'm this dude? Oh, they thought a lot of people were Juba. One of my clients, they initially thought he was Juba. Turns out he was a little punk from the north side who went to Cross River Community College and sold a little herb to look cool. He's at Freedman's University now, probably pretending he's tough and slinging nicks. One of my dummy clients. Clown. I've never even smoked a joint before. Not even in college? Nope. What the hell have you been doing with your life, cousin? I didn't respond to that. Just shook my head, thinking of Juba. We talked for a few hours, had some more drinks, and then my cousin left. Before leaving, though, he told me again to forget about Juba. I hadn't made up my mind whether or not I would leave it alone, but I told him I would. There was so much on my mind, and most of it involved Juba. Every day I sat at home without a job, I thought about what had happened. I awoke from nightmares where winged beasts with guns swooped in and slammed me to the ground. I felt so weak and powerless and foolish, and still so unemployed. I kept hearing the name, folks mentioning him in idle conversation. Juba's name seemed to pass from every lip. I wondered if people had always talked about Juba this much, or if something new had seized the consciousness of the town. In between submitting job applications, I went from person to person telling them about my ordeal. To a man, all knew of Juba. Some said I was lucky I still had a life. Others tied Juba to a police slang so many months ago. A good number of people described Juba as a happy-go-lucky guy, the Santa Claus of marijuana peddlers, a grandfatherly guy with good advice and a sack of chronic. Only I, it seemed, had never heard of Juba. One cousin, one I rarely spoke to, said, Juba ain't shit. That nigga sells nicks and dimes, but he smoked most of it himself. I used to buy weed from him, high off his own supply every damn time I seen him. He ain't no throat slitter. He a joke. Where can I find Juba? I asked. Fuck if I know. I ain't seen him in a long, long time. And that was what most people said. No one knew where Juba stayed. Most had never even seen him. I couldn't be sure he even existed. My cousin, the attorney, checked up on me from time to time. He kept telling me to drop it. I grew sick of hearing from him. So eventually, when his number flashed across my phone, I didn't answer. One time he called, I let it ring. When it finished ringing, I thought to call a reporter friend of mine. I figured if anyone had the resources to find out more about Juba, it was him. He sounded rushed, told me he'd never heard of Juba, and apologized about what had happened to me. Before I could say anything more, he said he had to go and hung up abruptly. I sat in my living room, smoking a cigarette, right down to the filter, hoping to forget about Juba. I decided I wouldn't obsess about Juba anymore and think about the day the police shoved me to the ground. But two things happened to make that impossible to forget. Each week I volunteered at KIDS Community Center in the McCoy neighborhood on the south side. I forget what the letter stood for. It could have been chaotic, ineffective, detrimental supervision. I taught math skills to children who were behind in school, but mostly I taught them to shut up, as the brats were forever talking out of turn and fighting with each other. Before class one week, an adorable girl with big eyes, brown skin, and hair plaited into one thick braid hugged me as I came in the door. I smiled at her embrace. Most times she was the loudest, most unruly of the bunch, forever threatening to punch one of the other kids, including the boys older than her. Are you going to be boring today? She asked. I felt my smile wither, and immediately I wanted to go home. I watched the kids scurrying about, finding places to hide from me. I looked down. Are you going to be boring today? I said, and she jumped back as if I had burned her. Even I was surprised by the heat of my words. I got through about half the lesson before I became frustrated with their interruptions and walked off to talk to a pretty counselor with reddish brown eyes and long hair that I later learned was a weave. In the past, she had seemed unimpressed with my condo and my watch. I kept telling her about them, hoping to wear her down. The counselors ignored the children who now ran through the place tossing things about. Occasionally, a counselor would shout at a student, but for the most part, the adults and the children didn't at all interact. To make conversation, I told the pretty counselor the story of my confrontation with the police. When I said the name Juba, her eyes widened. She pointed to the cute little girl who had accosted me. The girl, the counselor said, was Juba's niece. The little girl raised her head when she heard her uncle's name and looked over at us, meeting our gazes and the counselor's pointing finger. You guys talking about my Uncle Juba? She asked. No, no, sweetie, the counselor said. No, we're not talking about your Uncle Juba, no. Sweetie, I said, tell me about your Uncle Juba. My Uncle Juba is tall and his hair is black and gray, and he's smart, smarter than you. I bet he knows way more about math than you. I bet he does. He taught me how to count, and he taught me how to spell, and he's always reading the Bible. His eyes are big like my mother's, but they're always red. Red like a sunset. Red like when I get cut. My mother said that's because Uncle Juba never sleeps. He stays up all night and all day long. I seen Uncle Juba asleep before, but mostly he don't sleep. Where's your Uncle Juba now, sweetie? She shrugged. I haven't seen Uncle Juba in a long, 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 long time, she said. He calls me. He sends me emails too. Says I'm the prettiest little girl he's ever seen. And Uncle Juba's right. I'm the prettiest little girl in all of Cross River and the whole world. Juba Franklin. That was his name. That's what the little girl told me. I didn't ask any more questions because I didn't want to let on that I was looking for Juba. The second thing that happened to keep Juba on my mind was that my reporter friend called back that night. He was just as brusque as he had been the day before, but he found something from talking to his sources. There was a Juba Franklin who hung out in a bar in Port Yuga, Virginia. He was there every night. Why the police didn't know my friend wasn't sure. Juba had moved his shady business from Cross River to Port Yuga, hiding in plain sight, and the fools couldn't figure out how to find him. Give me a nickel bag, he said before hanging up. I've never been a religious man. My mother says that's why I had such a hard time finding a job. Still, I took the turn of events as a sign. Maybe to find a job, I needed to track Juba down. I needed to see his face to understand all that had happened to me. Perhaps I could even say a word or two to him. I brushed that idea out of my head. There were so many incarnations of him. He could have easily been a cold-blooded killer, but it was just as likely that he was a friendly neighborhood pop peddler. I figured the truth of him rested somewhere in the middle. I called a few people to ask their advice, but I only called those who shared my curiosity and thought Juba was probably not a dangerous guy. Sitting at home all alone, watching daytime television, I had a lot of time to think about such things. Such a man, one who knew everyone at all levels from the dirtiest dealer on Angela Street to the well-heeled people on the hilltop, could explain so much that I, with my limited experience, had never understood. In all honesty, I made up my mind after I got off the phone with my reporter friend, but it took me a few days to realize it. I sat in a bar in Port Yuga in the middle of the day drinking a beer called Purple Haze in honor of my potential meeting with the weed dealer, Juba Franklin. I felt preposterous, but less preposterous than I felt with my cheek to the pavement and my hands cuffed behind my back. I glanced around trying to figure which of these men was Juba. It was an easy question to answer, as I was the only black man in the bar. I chomped on peanuts to pass the time, and at one point ordered chicken wings. I felt foolish with the grease from the wings on my fingers and asked for a knife and fork. The bartender looked at me strangely and then handed me the utensils. Eating the wings with a knife and fork made me feel like more of a fool, and I stopped, letting the wings grow cold. At about 6, I realized the ridiculousness of the whole enterprise and planned to leave. But before I could summon the will to walk away, 2 men strode into the bar. The shorter man had an ashy bald head shaped like peanuts I ate. The other was tall and dark, with black, lightly salted hair. His eyes were blood red, nearly glowing in his face. Juba. There was a part of me that said, just turn and go home. But I could still feel those metal bracelets pinching at my wrist. I walked over to the man's table, nearly called the man Uncle Juba when I opened my mouth, but I caught myself. I'm new in town, I said. I don't trust these crackers. They don't seem too cool. You know where I can get some pot? Uh-uh, Juba replied. I don't really know nothing about that. You Juba? Sorry, Jackson. Don't know nobody by that name. I twisted my brow, giving him a puzzled look. He blinked a lot, so I wondered if that had some sort of meaning. He shook peanuts from their shell and crunched them in his teeth. It seemed like he was making fun of me. The other man tried his hand at looking menacing. He gave me a flat look of irritation. It said that he was unafraid and would destroy me if I bothered him for too long. His intimidation was a moderate success. I could see myself turning and running, but I held firm. Well, I said, I guess it's for the best that you're not Juba, because I was going to tell that guy his weed isn't shit. He's trying to pass off dirt as the chronic. The bald man cracked a smirk, his head a flaky white under the dull glow from above. Juba's face remained flat and expressionless, but he bowed his head and shook it side to side as if lost in prayer. Boy, why you won't mess around with your life, huh? Juba asked. Don't even ride yourself like that, my nig. Everybody from Cross River to Port Yuga and all spots in the middle know that Juba got them fire tea leaves, Chief. So you do know Juba. You police? If I was, you know I could lie if I wanted to, I said. It's a myth that I legally have to tell you the truth if I'm a cop. And I'm not a cop. But if I was one, I'd just lie. Ain't you Reg Dubois' head? He replied. A what? A regular genius, Jack. Keep up, my nig. You speak fast. It's hard to follow sometimes. The bald man's eyes danced in disbelief. I'm not rapping fast, Juba said. I'm just talking a different language than you. When two niggas from El Salvador get together and talk, neither one of them complain that the other is all flashy speaking or whatever. It's just the squares. The outsiders like you, not me. I know Spanish. Like you that complain. You a river baby? I prefer Cross Riverian. Cross Riverian. Of course you do, he said. Bougie niggas always prefer Cross Riverian. It's better than being a baby, I replied. The problem is we always infantilize our people. Folks don't want to grow up and be men and women. The world would finally respect us if we would just be men. Blah, 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 right and sure. Tell me, if y'all niggas got money and houses and things over there on the north side, and I can already tell you a north side nigga, then why y'all so cross? Cross Riverian literally means angry river person. You know that, right? Looks to me like south side folks are more angry. That's where people get robbed and shot and stuff like that. Checkmate. I tell you what, you look like a true. I'll give you some of that star product if you give me a fumie. Huh? Juba sighed. The bald man grunted and crunched peanuts between his teeth. River babies don't even know their own tongue no more. Nigga, give me a cigarette and I'll sell you some weed. Shit, may even have a story to tell you too. I handed him a cigarette and he asked me to follow him. Juba and I left the bar. The bald man stayed behind. Juba took me into a basement apartment so small it seemed like a cell, a spacious cell, but still a cell. A few beams of natural light came in from the streets above. Juba's bed took up most of the space. He had a bookshelf filled with holy books and books about the holy books. In the corner sat a little desk, and atop it a thick, raggedy Bible with torn pages and post-it notes sticking out from the edges. It was open to the first page of the book of Revelation. Juba had several sentences underlined and notes running up and down the margins in a graphomaniacal frenzy. Juba rolled a joint, lit it, and offered it to me, but I passed. He sat it at the right corner of his mouth and blew smoke out the left. Then he spoke rapidly about the flow of the Cross River for minutes on end, the way a man might speak about a lover he missed. I got a sale on the Star product, he said. Chronic's always a crowd pleaser. I got Dro, Purple Haze, but I recommend the Star product, Cross River's finest. They don't grow that shit nowhere else. Only find that shit in the around Cross River. I'm smoking it now for your sampling pleasure. I looked around at his cramped apartment. You don't make a lot off this, do you? I asked. Enough to afford this mansion and to keep me in these fancy Armani linens, he said, running his hand along his jeans and long sleeve t shirt, both torn and faded from frequent washing. Nah, my man, it's all shorty cool. Don't need to make a lot, just enough for renting books. I I heard you were a kingpin. Yeah, there are competing versions of me out there in the world. Damn near heard I popped a Kennedy one day in November. His words were slightly amusing, but as I watched him, something shocked me so much that my skin tingled. I noticed that he and I did share a slight resemblance. He too had drawn cheeks and big eyes that looked as if they were floating in his head. Hear the police tell it. I got tons flying in on planes every afternoon. They scared of me because they think I'm getting their little daughters hooked on my jungle weed. He paused. I guess I am. I sell dubs and half centuries, and sometimes I might sell a pound, but that's as much as I griff. I ain't trying to be their monkey in a cage. That's why I had to come down here until things ain't so radioactive. I found out they were after me, accused me of doing some apocalyptic shit, of being all behind all the tea in Cross River, Jackson. You know how many niggas be selling grass? They looking for me back home. They can't even imagine I'm over here. They know how much I love Cross River. They figured I'd never leave my home. Shit. I never thought I'd leave the Riv myself. Things will calm down eventually. I'll be back. I don't even like this job. You don't? Fuck no, my nig. Been doing this too long. You look cool, so I'll tell you this. Juba walked over to his desk and picked up a notebook. He flipped through the pages before putting it into my hands. See that? That's my real job. I'm just doing this weed dealer biz until I can finish up this project. There were strange markings on each page, words that I didn't understand, beautiful sketches that had an unfinished quality. What is this? Man, can't you read? See, Cross River folks so busy talking like white people, they done lost their tongue. Every strange word you hear in Cross River, every little piece of slang probably sprang from me, like 75 to 87%. I come from a long line of weed dealers. Don't get smart, my nig. You knew I wasn't going to say that. My dad was an engineer, but that wasn't his main thing. I capture and create the language we speak in Cross River, just like my daddy before me and my grandfather before that and my great-grandfather who was in the great insurrection before there was even a town called Cross River. We done lost our tongue. Some shit I got to say to you, I won't even try to say because ain't no words for it. I got to use more words than I would have to use if we had our language back. I got to speak so slowly so you understand me, even though we from the same place. Ridiculous, but it ain't your fault. I'm trying to complete the Cross River tongue. I flipped through the book. The words started to make sense a little, but there were huge canyons of language I couldn't understand. It's probably the way, with my high school Spanish, I'd look at a book written in that language. So, what is this, a dictionary? I asked. A dictionary? You niggas in Cross River are more lost than I ever thought. Shit. He stopped speaking for a moment. No, hell no. This ain't no damn dictionary. The people ain't ready for that. For like 20 years, I've been translating the Bible into Cross Riverian, as you bougie niggas like to say. Nah, y'all wouldn't even call it that. Y'all don't think the way we talk is nothing special, at least not special enough to have a name. Y'all spend a lot of time translating from English to Cross Riverian and back in your heads. Y'all just don't know it. Niggas ain't slow. They just translating. I'm going to do the Quran next, and then the New word, hold on. Bhagavad Gita. I butchered that. I already did the Heart Sutra. Did that shit to warm me up. I got a rack of other sutras to do, but that's a ways off. I got a lot of books to translate. It's going to take a while, though. Once I finish the Bible, everything else should move quickly. I need to capture the language first. It's triply hard now that I ain't in Cross River no more. Got folks mailing me new words in exchange for dro. The police might catch up to me before I'm done. As he spoke, it was like a spirit moved over the void of the words on the pages, and I started to completely understand what Juba had written. I came to the end of the story of the Great Flood, and it was like one of my cousins from the South Side had whispered it into my ear. I tell you what, brother man, I've enjoyed this convo with you, Juba said. Take a dub of that Star product for the road. I shook my head. I can't. No, man. You don't know how good this has been for me. I like meeting river babies. I don't hardly get a chance no more since I'm in Port Yuga. Not that I don't like Port Yuga in its own way, but it ain't Cross River. I pocketed the bag of weed. It was nearly black and it smelled like all outdoors. One whiff was enough to intoxicate me for precisely 15 seconds. At least that's what Juba said. I never did smoke it though. I put it in my basement in a briefcase where I kept all the things I wanted no one to find. After a while, I forgot the code and couldn't even get back into the briefcase if I wanted to. Juba and I stayed in touch, but I never saw him again. I offered him words, phrases, and critiques of his translation of the Bible by mail. Sometimes he'd send me weed as a payment, and I always threw it away. As I walked from his house that evening, I had no idea what to make of the afternoon. When I got onto the bus to Cross River, I sat next to a man from the South Side who spoke to me about his life. His accent was so thick, so at times I got lost. But when I was engaged, I felt transported to his childhood. As the bus crossed the bridge from Port Yuga into Cross River, he said, I know who you are. Who am I? He leaned in and whispered, You that dude they call Juba. I shook my head and smirked a bit. I'm not Juba, I said. I'm not him at all. It's okay, he said. I ain't a yopper. I'll keep it to myself, my nig. The man pulled out a piece of paper and wrote down some words and phrases. They were things a cross-Riverian might say. He nodded and crinkled the paper into my palm, and I accepted it, folding it away in my left breast pocket. And thus endeth the story. Listen, y'all, I am absolutely loving this. I have to take a brief break. So please hold on for a minute with me and I'll be right back. Thank you so much for your patience. Post your questions and comments and we'll get to them as soon as I come back. And we are back. Thank you so much for your patience. Now. Oh my gosh. So real talk. I see that y'all were having some conversation with the brother Rion, which is dope. I love that, man. See, real talk, like only on Storytime with Julian, right? Like author swing by, listens to the story, answers questions for y'all. I am done. I see somebody named Hunter Biden that we're just gonna go ahead and block. Boom. Take care of that right now. And incidentally, I know that my moderators are available. So if I miss anybody and you're on that platform, please go ahead and block them. We ain't even gonna worry about that. Now let's look at some of these. Some of these questions and comments here. Yes, we are reformatting the after show, but we still do the after show. It's just a little bit different for the time being. Rion says that moment of "Are you going to be boring today?" actually happened. And I'm gonna tell you, when I was reading and I was like, "Oh, that's real." I knew for a fact, I was like, he was teaching somebody or went to do some speech or talk somewhere, and some little kid said it, because little kids do that. They will knock the wind right the fuck out of you and just take all your little good feel. They will hurt your feelings. They will hurt your feelings. L. Jack had it right. Kids just do not give a damn. I see Angel Monique is saying, yes, baby girl. And I am betting that that was at the moment she was saying, and he's right too. I am pretty. I'm the prettiest girl in Cross River, because I felt that. I was reading those words and I felt that. I'm like, this little girl knows she the shit. She just know. Ain't nobody can't tell her nothing. Don't even try to. Rion confirms that yes, it was between a less mature version of him and a student. And I would really, really like to hear that story. So we'll see if he's available to talk about that. Um, the book of Revelation is one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. So some of y'all know that my mom is a preacher. And in her day, before she is, for all intents and purposes, retired now. But one of the finest teachings that my mother did as a minister was her teaching on the book of Revelation. And it is truly, truly powerful, and it is beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's weird, and it's twisted, and it's visual in a way that uh dares you and challenges you to visualize things that are really outside your typical imaginings. When we for those of us who read the Bible, even if you read it just sort of for entertainment value, there's this tendency to just kind of imagine people like you see people, except they're in, long robes and sandals doing regular people stuff. Revelations, no. Revelations does not give you that comfort, but it is indeed one of the most beautiful things. Kamisha says, thank you, Rion, for writing stories for us, of us, and to us. Absolutely. It was a true pleasure to read this. So let's talk a little bit about this story. And Rihanna, I'm guessing that you want to continue to entertain things there on Facebook, which is cool. We can do it that way. But what are y'all's thoughts? How are your? I will say this much: I did not see Juba's true vocation uh, playing out the way that it did, and it really made him so much richer. Like who he really was so much bigger and so much more beautiful than any of the mythology around him. Um, any of those things that they said he was so much bigger than that, and it was really profound. Also, the love story that it represents of African American vernacular English, um, that this man has essentially dedicated his life, and that his family has generationally dedicated their lives to recording and preserving our tongue. And then, just as a reader, you realize as you're reading Juba's character and as you're reading all the characters, that that's what the author himself is also doing. He is recording and preserving the language and the rhythm and the cadences of our tongue. And for those of you all who have been following the show for some time, we've read a lot of Rion Amilcar Scott's work, and it is an unflinching, unapologetic symphony in a lot of ways of Black English. Um, One of the challenging things about reading it on the page is that, as a matter of style, um, Rian does not put speaking characters, phrases in quotes. And what I've come to believe and come to recognize about that is what that does is it every word is of equal weight. Now, when I'm reading and performing it, I give narrative voice to some and I give character voice to others, which I think might put them sort of here and there, and it sort of it lifts up and there's rises and falls that are natural for speech, but that is for the purposes of better communicating the story with you all. But what it does on the page is it doesn't set aside some words to make them potentially less than or potentially more than other words. And that to me is a powerful device. Um, Hang on a second. I'm just getting a message, so I'm getting ready to do something real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and copy that. And thanks, y'all. Y'all are so patient with me. I love y'all. Actually, legit, I really do love y'all. Sending a link over right now, and we should Rion says that he is all about equality, and there is something about that. So, in a few moments, Mr. Scott will be joining us. So, have your questions ready. We're going to read them from the screen, and we'll have a little bit of an exchange. And given that we have him, we'll probably just do this story and have that discussion. Um, the story three insurrections is a little bit longer, and I don't know that we'll be able to give it the time that it deserves, and I certainly don't want to rush through it. So what I think we'll do is we'll pick that story up. Lord, I hate to think about it, but it may still the idea and the theme of insurrections may still be particularly timely and newsworthy in the coming weeks. If you've been paying attention to what's going on. Jack says, in speaking language, I wish we'd stop explaining Ebonics and slang to white people. It has become a bit of yeah, yeah. It's something that gets in my craw too, bruh. I can absolutely feel you on that. Oh wait, Rion says he was looking forward to three insurrections. Well, come on, Rion. We're gonna do three insurrections. Just get you. You should have a link by now. You come on through, and I'll cut this part short, and we'll talk about both. And listen, I mean, story time is story time. It doesn't have a set time, and since we're going to go ahead and do, I mean, yeah, I try to end it at 11:15, but we ain't got to. For those of y'all who want to stay for all of it, you should do that. And for those of y'all who feel like you got things that you got to prepare for, and you might have actual offices you have to go to tomorrow or what have you, I understand. The recording will be here, but we're gonna go ahead and you know, it's not often that we have the authors with us. So if they say I was really looking forward to, then why would we not do that? That's not that hard. All right, hold on. I'm actually pulling it up. I find that that Apple Books is, or no, this is actually, I think this was Kindle is what I had to mess with because Apple Books was tripping. But let me go ahead and pull it up now. I'm going back to the beginning of the book so that I can find the page. And I'm still waiting to see, Rihanna, I'm still waiting to see when you pop in so that we can bring you up. But let's go ahead and for everybody who plans on sticking around, cool, cool, cool. We're gonna do three insurrections. Hold up, pause. Hang on, I'm not really going nowhere. I'm just covering the screen for a minute. All right, and we're back again like tag team. Three insurrections. I went deep into the wildlands one day, and when they found me, I was near death. My flesh generated enough heat to power a plant to keep a power plant going for a month probably. I burned at 107 as if my heart had been replaced by a tiny sun. The doctor tells me brain death begins at 106. He says this ashen faced, surprised I'm sitting up, unconscious, barely run it back. The doctor tells me brain death begins at 106. He says this ashen faced, surprised I'm sitting up, conscious, bleary, and dazed, but alive. My parents sit across from my bed at Cross River Hospital Center, the place I was born. Here, too, I watch my son, Dejasi, push himself into the world. I'm hoping the universe is not angling for some sort of sad symmetry, making my place of birth also my place of death. Monique and Neville Sampson, two human beings, yet one person. My father reminds me of when I was 4 and I hit my older brother, Blair. Daddy asked me why I did it, and I said, Dad, you know I'm brain damaged. Now you are, he says, cackling, leaning into my mother's lap as she taps his arm and tells him to hush. This is serious, Mr. Sampson, the doctor says. He tells me it's probably malaria or chickpea or dengue fever or something else you can't get in America. Don't believe any of that, please. I just went into the forest. I didn't leave the country. Though it's true that mosquitoes have never been my friend, what's really going on is that Cross River is trying to kill me. The doctor talks, and I can feel my heart beating at a rapid speed, and the heat from my skin is burning my sheets, but not really. That's just my delirium. I think of the times I visited my godmother and cousins with my grandmother, my mother's mother, in Trinidad, back when I was young and Granny was still living. The trucks driving by at night spraying white smoke into the air, smoke seeping through the tightly drawn jalousies. The fleeing mosquitoes seeking refuge in the house in the East Dry River that my mother grew up in, the same house her mother grew up in. The bugs hide for a while, but then all die away. For a week, no mosquitoes drink from me, and all my old welts stop itching and fade from my skin. In due time, the bugs return, swarming me late into the night. Maybe, I think, sitting in that hospital bed, they put something deep inside me that's only coming to life now. Mr. Sampson, the doctor says. Ken, my father calls. I look up. The doctor says, what were you doing so deep in the wildlands anyway? I tell the doctor I was looking for myself. I don't tell my father when he asks, nor my mother, nor my wife, Peace. I whisper it to my son later because he's a baby and thus unable to speak it. I'm not here to tell you about my time in the wildlands either. So if you've come for that, then I'm sorry, but you'll be disappointed. Remind me later, though, and I might tell you. My father breaks the silence. Only two types of people does go so deep in the wildlands, you know, fools and madmen. You're forgetting the wolfers, my mother replies. What you think they are? What about Blair? I ask. He think he a wolf hunter. My father, a set of chuppiness, he mumbles. He a fool too. We only have one sensible child, Monique. Lena would never go to so deep in the wildlands. Your brother and sister call yet, Ken? Of course not. My father sighs. My father talks, but he never talks, you know? When we get silent and it's just hospital sounds around us, I ask him to tell me about his father. He pauses and says, what's there to say, boy? Then he becomes quiet and offers to watch Dejasi so Peace can visit. Peace is the last person I want to see. Like, Pop, I say, you tell me the funny stuff. Like when that white guy beat up the ref at the soccer game. Never see a cut ass like that. But what about the other stuff, huh, Dad? My mother says she'll go to my apartment to watch Dejasi. Before either my father or I can object, she's out the door. It's just me and Neville Sampson. What's there to say? He asks again. What you want to know, huh? Like, tell me, Dad. I feel the fever bubbling through me like steam, burning my brain. I imagine it rising from the top of my skull on a bed of hot white smoke. Tell me how we got to Cross River. The pipe and the book. Is the book first, and when I forget the book, is the pipe that tell me go across river. It's like history put hands on my back and shoved me from the sidewalk into the street, Ken. I always an athlete, so my mind does go back to that often. Stay on your feet. That's what I keep thinking. Like I'm on the football pitch and some guy's running toward me. I had a coach used to say, the most persistent rewards go to those who stay on their feet. But this is like nothing I ever seen, you know? These people out there rocking and flipping a car. We like bees, Ken. All of us. Thousands upon thousands of bees walking to find our queen. She get head chop off. You see you all delirious and half crazy. That's how everybody was on that day. I'll never forget. April 5th, 1968. The 4th was like a dream. Fuzzy, confusing. But the 5th was real. Martin Luther King dead. I couldn't tell you why I was out there in truth, Ken. Some people want to take a piece of Whitey and call that justice, and even trade, you know. Some want the things they can't even get on a regular day. Television sets, jackets, scarves, food, and all that. And then some just want out there carving the fire, the burn. I don't know, boy. Maybe I wanted some of all of that. Too much to name, I guess. All I know is that I'm angry like everyone else. Whatever burn in them, burn in me. I feel that buzzing like bee wings inside me. Wasn't no I a Trini and you a Yankee, I a Trini and you a Negro, nah. Before I open my mouth, they treat us all like niggas. That's it. Ain't take long to figure that out. Wait, I'll go get to the pipe in a minute. So, Ken, you wouldn't believe the amount of smoke they have rising up above DC. Smoke for so. People burn cars, they burn stores, they burn apartment buildings, they burn everything. I tell you, I ain't never seen nothing like it. People running around, in and out the broken windows of stores, ain't no police nowhere. I stand over near Florida and Rhode Island just watching, boy. I live on our street, so it's not too much of a walk. People screaming and waving their arms. I just watch, taking it all in, telling myself to stay on my feet. The fires, though, remind me of the book. The cover self like it on fire. Sure did set fire in my mind when I was in teacher's college back home. 3 insurrections. It flit through my head at that moment. I ain't see that cover in about 50 years now, but it like I can see it right there in front of my face. I ain't see that book for maybe 2, 3 years when I out there walking in that riot, but it's in my mind's eye clear. I know what I see, Ken. Those exact flames from the riot is the same flames on the cover of that book. When they describe all those pages is what I see in that city. I wish I could go back to that moment in the library at the teacher's college when I was holding that book, drinking those pages, yeah. Before I could take in all the riot, fully appreciate the moment, I feel a bump at my shoulder, and I stumble. Something in my heart start to flutter as I fall, like I go die right there in that strange city in this strange country. I say to myself, Neville boy, what kind of mistake you make coming here? Like it's a football match and I make that play that lose the game. That's how I feel. But this is serious. I feel a hand grab my arm, pull me up. It's Charles. Now Charles live on my block. He don't say much. Quiet eyes, always searching. He sit outside of his stoop most of the time and he sits still, nearly a gargoyle. I bet he out there now. When I see him, we exchange 2, 3 words, but the words got whole worlds inside them. Me and he born oceans apart, but we understand each other. He hand the only thing stopping me from hitting my head on the concrete. Neville, what you doing out in all this? I pull myself to my feet. The man only talk peace and they shoot him. But what is that? So you see how they do us? They kill a man of peace. What you think they do to regular Negroes, huh? Neville, go home, brother. This all gonna blow over. They'll build all the buildings back and then they'll go stomping us again. Go to class, get your degree, and let us handle this shit, man. Ken, Charles was wrong, you know. They ain't built nothing back, not for 30 years. Remember when I take you to D.C. begging you like hell to go to Howard? nearly 30 years to the day, and that's when they start taking down some of them buildings and putting something new there. What you think that do to people's minds, huh? How you think they feel living in the capital of the nation and it looked just like war just happened? But I respect the hell out of Charles. That winter before all this, I'm walking home and I see this man's hand. Not Charles, someone else. Something black in it. Black, black, black. Heavy. The thing look impatient. I ain't never seen no gun in real life. My father ain't like those things, never wanted them around. You got any money on you, sir? He say, polite as ever. I tremble. I scared. I nod. I reach for my wallet, slowly. I'm not trying to anger that gun. Thank you, he tell me, still with all the politeness his mother can teach him. He never meet my eyes. To this day, I think his gratitude genuine way. I see Charles the next day and I tell him what happened. When all this go down, he asks, sitting there cool on his stoop. Yesterday, during the afternoon? Yeah, bright as day, he jump out on me. Charles nod. He grunt. I go to pick up my mail the next day, and beside the letters and thing, there's my wallet. Everything intact except the money, of course. Standing there on that street in D.C. with the riot all around me, I watch Charles disappear into the world. I want to follow. I see the last flicker of him in between the people, and I felt swept up, dust in the gigantic broom of history. This how they want it, huh? They Negroes down bottom, frogs running from the river while giant children is chasing to crush them under their foot. Your grandmother used to say all the time. She ever say this to you? What is joke for schoolboy is death for crop owl. That was us. Frogs scattering from the foot of the great white man. I walk where I see Charles going. I don't see he, but I walk. Just walk. I don't know where I go and I just walk. I'm walking. It's all so different than how yesterday started. Yesterday I walked with purpose, nearly stomp into class, nothing on my mind but the test I'm about to take. When I get to campus, I see people huddled up. Seem like more people out on the yard than usual. I don't think nothing of it. No time to think of anything but this chemistry test anyway. Besides, with nothing unusual seeing people huddled up in intense conversations on campus. Howard was real. Someone always deep in political discussion. You look up and it's a sea of afros bobbing up and down furiously. A couple of times we take over campus. That's another story, though. What I'm getting at is Howard was at the center of black life, at least for us, at least in D.C. Wasn't strange to see Stokely Carmichael walking around the yard. He graduated from there. You know he come from your mother's neighborhood in Port of Spain over in East Dry River. You know that, right? She bragged they went to kindergarten together. What you laughing at, boy? But I get by the library and I see Larry, your godfather. He say, class cancel. Class cancel? But I stay up all night studying. McGregor playing the ass. All class cancel. You ain't here? Someone shoot Martin Luther King. Shoot? King? Who? Larry shrugged. That's when the feelings start. That dislocation. It grow out a feeling that I always had with me when I ask myself just what the hell I'm doing here. I still ask myself that when the winter whip in and I think about how your Uncle Alton probably back home on the beach. That day I start wondering seriously why I'm here though. Like why I come to a place where they kill a man apiece just for spite. Not even a year before, the football team at Howard, we play some team down south, and afterward we trying to get something to eat. Now all of we as Africans or from West Indies, black, would no one see us. Restaurant after restaurant, the coach after he come from the last place, he'd get back on the bus, put he head down and cry right there. I ain't want to cry, but I ask myself, why be here? Why I come to some place that hate me? I forget the book. That's the answer to all that. The book. It flicker in my mind sometimes back then, little shards of it. When I'm following the crowd in the chaos on that day after they killed King, I think of the book a little bit. Not much, but I think of it. When I walk home from campus after hearing King get shot, I start feeling dazed, on fire. You should see all the things passing through my head. I spent the fourth sitting in my room. I do schoolwork. I call your mother. I sleep, dream, wake, and let myself get tortured by thoughts, questions. Why am I here? Memories. Right before I step on the plane to come over to America, I hear about some Negro bodies they find in the South, all hung and twist up, nowhere near D.C., but still. Alton read the article in the newspaper to me in disbelief. Neville, is you sure you want to take this trip? Nah, Alton, I sure ain't. But that wasn't the truth, Ken. Your Uncle Raoul had long split for Canada, same with your Aunt Janice, and your Aunt Maisie was in England, and I think Alvin was in Rochester by this time. When I get chance to go to Howard, I learned D.C. not too far from Cross River in Maryland. I mean, it's farther than I thought, but I have to see Cross River, the place I read about in the book, the place of the insurrection. And since my father passed, I had been going and going and going. I had to slow it down just to get a hold of my thoughts. The fetes and the girls and the football and cricket. There was a drama workshop and, of course, the teaching and teachers' college. I ain't expect to come a teacher growing up, you know. My father was respected in the teaching community, headmaster of the community school in Takariga, and he run the teachers union for a while. So one of his friends, a fellow teacher, show up after I finish high school and say, "Come, Neville, let we take a ride." Before I know it, I'm at the district office filling out forms. And that Monday, I get a letter assigning me to an elementary school in Tunapuna as an apprentice teacher. Teaching's in our blood, Ken. I was happy when you start teaching at Freedman's University. Your Aunt Janice taught, and Raoul taught, and even Blair for a time. Now he, the school resource police at District Central. That's your grandfather speaking through us. I keep digressing. Where was I? Ah, yes. Out on the street, me and the crowd. We marching now, moving like an entity. Every few steps, someone join up. Every few steps, someone break off. I see people mashing up windows of stores. Some places got Soul Brother or Black-owned spray paint across the front. The crowd leave those alone. Most people just want to make a little mischief. Then they got some that's taking off with goods. In the truth, I thought about breaking off, running through one of them stores. I just lose my job taking customer calls at the Washington Post. It was either play football or take Sunday shift they ain't scheduled me for. Guess which one I pick. I get help from friends and thing, but it's still hard. This before I start driving in an illegal taxi for a little while back in law school. Why you make your eyes so big for her? This after your brother born. You do what you do to survive. If you ain't see that with Jasi yet, you will. I march steady, steady though. What go through my head what my father say he see me ransacking a store. I imagine Vernon Sampson watching me. My father. Boy, what can I say? I loved him a lot. We was close. All of us. Everyone he owned relationship with daddy. He a man without a past. You think I quiet about my old days? I an amateur next to he. After he passed, Maisie tell me little what she know. His father may have been Indian, half Indian, something, but I never know any of his family. He an outside child, and when he come an apprentice teacher, they assign him coincidentally out San Fernando near where his father lived. Daddy tell his father, I never ask nothing from you and you never give me nothing much, but I get in my career start. I need a place to live out here while I apprentice. His father have a reputation. A lot of people look up to him. The whole world can't know he have an outside child running around, so he tell him, boy, I can't help you and please don't come back asking for nothing. So daddy cut off all ties and ain't speak not once to his father, to us. A professor up at the teacher's college one time pulled me to the side and he say, you look just like your uncle, boy. I just blinked, not sure what he talking about. Later I find out I have a justice in Port of Spain, Garvin Sampson, but I never knew the man. Everything about Daddy steady, quiet. He have his own way of teaching you, eh? I tell you, when your father, the headmaster, you have a little tough. You have to be a little tough. Back in elementary school, I was supposed to stay in class during the first 10 minutes of recess to get some extra help in maths. My friend Kelvin and say, why we have to stay inside while everyone out playing? Well, boy, 3 of us out of 7 choose to go to recess when we're supposed to be inside. Me, Kelvin, and John. We playing football and laughing it up. We even go by the window and point at the fellas who stay. No one telling us nothing the whole time. Later in the day, my father announced that he'd given the whole school some free time. An hour to play outside instead of sitting in class. Everyone start clapping and laughing and thing. We get up and my father say, John, Kelvin, and Neville, please step to the front. Instead of the 10 minutes we were supposed to have on lessons, we spend the whole hour going over maths, listening to everyone outside, watching people come by the window and point. Daddy boy. Now later, when I get older and I'm in line for a scholarship to go to London, I make the score, but they give it to some white boy in my class. Teacher say, Neville got the brains, but he too fast by his mouth. He not England material. Well, Ken, I feel defeated, deflated. You hear certain things like one of the Irish priests who teach in my high school always telling us that Negroes in America too out of place and thing. But that's the first time I was made to feel, look, I wasn't no shrinking violet. I was kind of like laying away. I ain't hold my tongue. Teachers and them don't like that. After that happened, I just stopped doing the work. I do it, but I do it in 10 minutes before I go play football or cricket. And it sure when my marks come. Daddy called me to his office in the back of the house and say, you comfortable with that? I say, no. I mean, Ken, what you think I go say? Then he pause and he look away and he sigh. He say, you shouldn't be comfortable with those marks, but you're going to be a big man soon. I can't tell you what you should be comfortable with. You have to decide what sort of man you're going to be. Someone who comfortable with these sort of marks or someone who want to show the world what kind of light he got. He ain't say no more. But I tell you, I never brought home marks like that again. He ain't have to rant and yell like, well, like I used to when you was being hard-headed. I guess I could take a lesson or two from Daddy. But you was something else, Ken. It's not long after that. It's not long after that, Daddy. When he passed, we was all together, except Raoul. He was off in Canada already. It was strange for us to all be in the house at the same time. Except Alton, we was all grown or nearly grown. So much running around to do. It was the Christmas holiday or thereabouts, and Daddy come home saying he not feeling too well. I remember he and Mom have a community meeting to attend that night. Mom go without him and let him rest. And it happened just after she get home. I hear she call out, come, something happened with your father. We rush in, all of us, and, well, boy, that's why you never get a chance to meet your grandfather. I happy as hell I get to wrestle with the Jossie and all the rest of the grandchildren. I know your grandfather would have loved y'all like nothing else. All that going and going and going, never holding still from after Daddy's funeral to the time I left the island. All that stopped me from dealing with how sudden, how unfair it was. Becoming a father ain't even offer me space to deal with it. I ain't even realized that I never reconcile it until you make me talk about Daddy right now. Even after I leave the island, there was a school and football and shutting down the campus in protest and getting adjusted to America. And then they killed the king. For that, somebody must pay. So the riot happening all around me. It feel like Juve morning. A swarm of us walking down the street and don't know where we're supposed to end up. I feel protected from the chaos, but a bit part of it too. Any moment, the police go come break us up, I feel. Or someone in the crowd goes start something. I don't know these people, but quick, quick, quick. It come like all for one. Our swarm and move like a flock of birds, all these beautiful black people in motion, moving and shifting with a kind of intelligence. When we reach the destination, we just know it. That shining place on the hill overlooking Rhode Island Avenue, the Safeway. We get to the place and all of we stand there watching it. And the manager, a short, little, bald, pink, fat, white man in an apron standing out front. I recognize him in his condescending tiny eyes. A black person asked him questions and he real curt. That man wouldn't let me return some bad chicken I bought there earlier in the day one time. You think they could act like that out Bethesda? Safeway had a lot to answer for, Ken. I hated going to that place. Please don't do this, the manager say. I'm thinking, why put your life on the line for a bunch of groceries? He must think Mr. Safeway go cry big tears at his funeral. Some guys surround him and they start shoving him back and forth and all around, passing him from man to man like a basketball. The manager pull away and run into the riot. Bad move. One of the fellas catch he and hit he one whop to the back of the head. I ain't feel bad about what happened to the Safeway. You go in there, you never see one of us working in front. The meat bad sometimes, and you point that out, you get one cussing from the manager or someone under him. Price is always $1, $2, $3, $5 higher than some other places, like the Giant up Georgia Avenue. But it's not easy for me to get to the Giant most times. I never realized it before, but I resent Safeway like hell from the moment I stop shopping there to the moment we standing in front of it. No one talking, but as a group, we decide the store's fate. A teenager grabbed a big rock stone and crashed the thing through the store window. I want to say, hey, we not done deciding, but I guess we finish. Something in me, maybe it's something by my heart, it tell me turn around, go home. But then I see it clear as clear, the man king, standing there with the cover of his book with his arms folded. Title say, Why We Can't Wait. I had it out on my desk in class one day back in teachers college. I pick it out at the library. You know, you hear bits and pieces about what the Negroes in America is doing, striking and sitting down and thing, but I needed to know more. The teacher come by and she tapped my book. This why you didn't do so well on the last test, Neville? But I get an 80. Oh, excuse me. I took it from your earlier work that you're not the type of student who is fine with an 80. My mistake. Careful with the stuff you're reading, Neville. Careful. I take it back to the library that day and I ain't read it till I get to America and realize everybody reading these books. Teachers assigning it in class. People talking about the Communist Manifesto and thing. How it was real. That afternoon when I take it back to the library, I supposed to go play cricket. But when I get to the library, I see the book. The book. The fire's burning on the cover. Like an animated thing, you know? Like the whole table on fire. And when I sat down, the flames speak the pages. 3 insurrections. I have a cricket match, you know. But who could remember cricket staring at all that beauty? I missed the damn game to read the book. All the insurrections sewn together like a beautiful garment on each page. The Haitians have an insurrection. The River Babies, the Cross Riverians, they have an insurrection. And there is one to come, and it's mentioned with the ones happening like it's a piece of threaded gold passing through the garment. I don't see my name, but I see me. I see you and you don't even exist. You're just a vague daydream in the back of the mind of two people who was on the same island but ain't met till they travel thousands of miles to go to Howard. You was just a sperm that's 15 plus years from being manufactured and an egg resting inside your mother. Something make me look left that book in the something make me left that book in the library though. Maybe it was too much to take. The way it make my mind spin and spin. I wish to hell I had grabbed it and run. From then on, Cross River is burned in my brain. I never thought too much about what's to happen with me next. I knew I ain't want to stay teaching forever. Some people expect me to come headmaster like daddy, take over where he left off, but that's not who I am. I knew that. Whenever I think about the future after that day in the library, I hear Cross River whispering behind my thoughts. Maybe it's always been there. I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it. But what kind of people is this, I think? These Cross River folk bloody they masters and live free like they not afraid. The book talk about the Haitians too, but I hear about them plenty. The Cross River Negroes is new to me. I see my island in a footnote. Some Cross Riverians set off through the Americas trying to export insurrection. Some even settle in Trinidad. The beauty just hold them even though they have slaves all over the free. I don't know much about our history before Daddy. Maybe we come from Cross River. How I know our people ain't take part in the great insurrection. And that is what draw me and your mother to our homeland, Cross River, maybe. Who knows is all I'm saying, Ken. Something about this book, Ken. You don't read it. You read it, but it make you live it like a dream. I come a Haitian that day, and then I come across Riverian. And just like a dream, I live that third insurrection too. But when I close the book, when I leave the library, I forget what it's like in the third insurrection. And then I must spend the rest of my life chasing it down. After I read it, I said to Alton, this happened somewhere in America. I sit there and retell the Cross River part of the book as if I make it up right there. I wasn't sure I didn't. They burned down the plantation. They killed the master's dad, I say. Boy, they ain't teach us none of that up in St. Mary's way. And I suspect they're not going to teach it to you neither. Alton nod, from politeness more so than interest. When all this happened, he asked me, but I can tell he not that concerned with my answer. Back in the 1800s, I say, early part. I go back to the library tomorrow and get that book for you. They call it the Great Insurrection. Got a town standing to this day in America. They ain't never shut it down. I have to get you that book, boy. Alton make he lips sore and turn from me like he can't be seen with a liar. The librarian shrug when I go back. It not on the shelf. No record of it ever being in the library, she say. You sure? I ask. Perhaps it was a patron, she tell me, but I don't think it was. I look for it in bookshops off Eastern Main Road. Every time I see a bookshop, I look for it. When I get to Howard, I dig through the library stacks in search of it. I still look for it to this day. Now we got the internet, and I look for it there too. But no dice, Ken. The smoke from behind that Safeway, I think it like what I experienced when I read the book. You look at me crazy, Ken. When you ever know me not to be rational? I studied chemistry when I was at Howard. I'm a man of science, but you can't tell a feeling nothing about science. Then people in the crowd start to pelt one set of bricks and rocks in the thing at Safeway, and then when they finish, they swarm like a crowd of ants. I ain't hear no sirens in the distance. It occurred to me I ain't seen not one cop. Later, they send the National Guard to lock down the streets, but D.C. belonged to us right then. I think about turning around, leaving the place to the people and their anger. Come back to the Safeway only when I need bread and milk, but the book is the thing. Someone pull me, a woman, a young woman. Come on, she say. Come on, don't stand there, come on. I don't think of my father. I don't hesitate, I do as she say, as the crowd say. I come right on. You should have seen these people throwing things off the shelves. People with arms full of cheese, socks, heads of lettuce, anything they can take with two hands. A man run past me. He bumped me on his shoulder, one set of bread flying all over the place. I apologize, and we both on the floor collecting the bread. His ill-gotten bread. He tell me, he say, it's nothing, brother, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. Hurry up and get you something before the pigs come. Don't worry about me. Go on, man, go on. So I go on. I see they got turkeys, but people in them tell me that it's not what you hear in November. I ain't know if it's strange to be eating turkey in April. I get to the dairy part, but I don't need no milk, no cheese, no eggs. I turn and see the bread. Got enough bread at home. I just come to this place a few days before white people decide to blow up the world. Not much I need, yeah. I had to stop and laugh. I never shop so carefully, Neville. I never shop so carefully. Neville, I say, what the devil you doing in here anyhow? I ain't imagined riots this way. All the upheavals I read about, heard about, and now I was in the middle of one, like the rebellious slaves in the book. Like me when I experienced the book. That's what the devil I was up to. I wander around, floating, dislocated, remembering that I lived through the Haitian Revolution and the Great Insurrection both. The book make it so. Don't look at me crazy, Ken. I know how it sounds. I stumble to the tobacco aisle, still empty-handed. But here is the pipe lying on the floor. Finally, the pipe. Someone knock it from the shelf. The wood on the thing looks smooth and shiny, plastic tip on the end. I take it out the bag and rest it on the corner of my mouth. Lottie, I mumble to myself. Lottie, Lottie. I take on the voice of my blind, senile old grandfather, living all alone on that land on Eastern Main Road. And when your grandmother come to visit me and one of the couple of uncles or aunts in tow, he always know it's she. The old man ain't know much of anything else, not anything about his grandchildren or anything it have going on in the world. Your grandmother warned over and over before we go inside, don't get too close. Your grandfather doesn't have all he wits. On a good day, I could touch my grandfather, but that was early on in my life. By the time I was 7 or so, only mom could touch him, or they say he was bound to fly into fits. That was something I ain't want to test. Mom always bring tobacco and dinner mints to calm him, and when she walked, she called, Poopa! Through that magic sense he have already tell him it's she. Later, when Grandpa get older and more agitated and excitable, he hold a cutlass tight in he hand when we walk through the door, and he only relax he grip when he's sure it's your grandmother and not bandits come to raid the house. This day, I watch the madman in his smoky black eyes. This man who know nothing but his daughter and his short corncob pipe. That pipe. That pipe. It looked nothing like the one I hold in my hand at Safeway, but it looked everything like it. If you ask me in that moment, I'm standing in the aisle pretending. Granddad's house burn of urine and hot air hanging heavy. He call her name, and his voice take on an edge until she respond, or sometimes she just put a hand on he back. Then he sit in his creaky chair and settle himself before reaching into the coal pot at his side to flip a piece of coal into his pipe. A couple puffs at that thing and he become content, peaceful. Granddaddy was always so precise, not just for a blind man, but for any man. That burning ember flipping through the dark, it never burned him, never spark on the ground, always flip into the mouth of that pipe. This time it's me and Raul and Mom. She wander about straightening up and then she go off to the kitchen to cook Granddaddy's food. I think I whisper when I turn to Raul and say, Granddaddy's gonna burn this place one day. Neville, you hush your mouth. Your granny called from the next room. Neville, you better hush your mouth, I mumbled to myself in that Safeway tobacco aisle. And I'm back there smelling the smoke coming from the street. Raul disappear, and then my mother disappear, and then my grandfather once again, he dead and gone. always like a spirit in a cloud of smoke. Sirens start screaming in the distance. There's a riot, a dead king somewhere shaking he head at all that burn and he name. There's the book and another insurrection somewhere, sometime. Police out there, maybe coming to save the safe way, and they don't mean no good for no one. I stuff the pipe in my pocket and run from the store back into the smoky streets, and I ain't stopped running till I at my door. All the while my heart is beating fast, fast, fast. In my ears like history shouting loud enough to deafen me. Not a day that go by after that I don't think about Cross River, that pipe. Every time I look at it, it reminds me the book exists somewhere and another insurrection go be happening sometime. Thinking about Cross River make me late to my wedding. Laugh, kin, but you almost wasn't made because of Cross River. We flirt with moving back to Trinidad, moving upstate New York. But the only thing we take serious is moving to this town. I go to law school at Howard again and get a job and thing, but then when your sister is 3 or 4, your brother 5 or 6, we pack up all our things, no job, no nothing. People tell me it have a big Caribbean community in Cross River. And it is true, and that nice and thing, but that's not why we move here. People ask me why I go Cross River. I say we come to see the insurrection. I don't know what we think we go find. I don't know what we did find, but we find it. I want you to remember this, Ken. You are the only member of this family that is born into Cross River. The rest of we adopted. Cross River is you. That moment in the aisle is you. Tell you the truth, when your brother Blair become a cop, I get disappointed. The son of Neville Sampson, a police? Nah. I feel like I ain't give him enough of what was in me in that moment during the riot. And your sister too damn reasonable for her own good. Sometimes, Ken, I think I give you too much of what was in me in that safe way. You're too damn miserable. But you, Akin Sanya Abel Sampson, you are the Cross Riverian dream. I know you say that sound corny and thing, but when them people wrench themselves free, it's you they think about. We sit in silence listening to the hospital machines beeping and sighing. I wonder if the thoughts spinning wildly and crazily around in my head are from the delirium or from my father's crazy tale. He breaks the silence first by drifting off into a snore that startles and wakes him. I think of how much all this recollecting must have cost him. Now you, he says. Huh? Tell me a story. I don't have no stories like that. Don't play the fool, Ken. You know what I mean. Tell me why you go quite out into the wildlands. Is nothing, boy, I say, mimicking my father's accent, his voice, the shrug of his shoulder and the wave of his hand, the same way my face has always mimicked his own, playing dead to catch Corbo alive. And thus endeth the story. Wow, y'all. Thanks for sticking around. Oh my goodness, I see there's so many comments because I couldn't look up at the time. Hold up. Oh wow. Okay, y'all had so okay, so let's see. I don't know who we still have here, so if anybody just wants to comment present so I know who's here, I would be most appreciative. We've been at this so long, the lighting has changed. I've gotta bring up the house light a little bit. Rion says, I'm told, oh, hey, you know what? I ain't even got to say what he said. I don't know who we still have here, so if anybody just wants to... What's happening, Rion? Good to see you, man. Here, I would be most appreciative. We've been at this so long, the lighting has changed. I got to turn down the volume. Got to bring up the house light a little bit. Rion says, I'm told, oh, hey, okay, there we go. I don't know who we still have here, so if anybody just what's up, Rion? Oh wow, it's like I can hear the delay. Can you hear me, Rion?
Oh, am I on camera? I didn't realize I was on.
Yeah, man, you're on.
Let me turn down the volume here.
You're on camera.
Good thing I wasn't digging up my nose or anything.
It is a good thing. Thanks so much for agreeing to come through. I appreciate it, man. How have you been?
I've been great, man. I've been great. Just real busy, but alive.
What
COVID free?
Say word. I feel you. That was such an incredible story. And I remembered when I started it, I was like, wait a minute, this was one of the excerpts that you had as part of Wordplay. And I had read it very, very differently during Wordplay because given the information that I had in just that section, I remembered really focusing on the fever and the possible brain damage of the lead character.
Mm-hmm.
This again was a completely cold read for me, so I had no idea that we were going to get this very rich, very beautiful story from the dad. I don't even really have a question prepared, but I will say that reading it felt very, very real. So I'm guessing this was at least semi-autobiographical.
Yeah, not autobiographical, more biographical.
Well, right, biographical, because it's your dad's story mostly.
Yeah, I interviewed him 3 sessions, an hour-long session. We sat and talked because, just like the father in the story, my dad, he didn't really talk much about his life growing up. And my brother told me that one time he was injured, my dad came to see him, came to take care of him at his house. And, my dad was just like, no, you never talked about grandpa. And then, my dad, unfurled the story. My dad, he'd been so traumatized by the sudden death of his father. He just never talked about it. He never thought about it. It's like 40 years on, he was just going and going and going. And until my brother made him talk about it. He never did. And I remember my brother coming and telling me and my other brother about it. And so that was sort of the basis of the story. And so, it was just such a wonderful memory to just be able to sit with my dad and talk to him. And we talked for a very long time each time. And it took me 3 years to write this story.
That's one of the things that every time we have an opportunity to talk, one of the most potent things that you say that resonates with me as a writer, and I've noticed it's true of many of the audience members, is how long it's taken to write some of these stories. And I think, for many of us, when the story doesn't just, flow out of our fingers like magic in some Michael Jackson video, we get, we get discouraged and we get devastated. And then I think it was one of the stories I read, you said took 10 years.
That story takes 10 years.
The Rolling in My 6'4". Yeah.
Rolling in My 6'4". And I think both those stories, what they have in common is there are certain things that I needed to get right. I needed to get that voice right. My dad laid out the story. I mean, a lot of that is exactly his life.
Oh wow.
Very
like
fictional.
Straight up words, no beautiful editing or anything.
There's some light fictionalizing, but from what he told, I just weaved together what he said or what he experienced, what he went through. The most interesting thing he told me was about that day after Martin Luther King was assassinated, how angry he felt. And so I just weaved in his history. Yeah. And I needed to get that right. And it was funny because I had a family friend was like, did your dad write part of that story? Because he couldn't believe that I got the Trinidadian voice down so well.
It was really phenomenal. I struggle with accents, and that's something that all of the West Indian members of the Storytime fam are quick to point out in the after story. But it was, even outside of any accent, it was the rhythm of the language just felt so, it just had a beautiful, wonderful feel. And it was, again, a testimony to the deftness with which you handled it, that, again, even absent the quotations and specific indentations, I knew where the voices switched. Like, I knew who was talking the whole time. I could feel the characters, and there was that separation in language that wasn't too distant, but enough that you could tell, okay, this is his daddy talking, and now this is and this is where it's him talking. I did appreciate that every once in a while when I would get nervous and I was like, it seems like the dad is talking for a while, and you'd have him say Ken, and I'm like, okay, cool. It's still I'm still on track. I still got the right person talking. This was such a I'm really I appreciate so much that you pushed just a little bit and that we read this story, because it is such the right story for the moment. You talk about the anger that your dad felt at King's assassination within your lifetime, and in current times. Has there been a time where you feel that you felt an anger similar to that?
Uh, we as black people with the age of the cell phone, we're, I think if we don't pull back, we're and pull back from watching these videos and even following the news. Sometimes I feel bad that I'm not honoring the people by following what's going on in their stories when they pass away. But sometimes emotionally I can't take it.
Yeah.
I think that we a lot of times we're in this extended state of anger and frustration. I remember Tamir Rice. That happened on my birthday, so I really wasn't paying attention to the news. And then
Wow.
when I did follow through, I was like, man, that's how could that fucking happen? I think about Tamir all the time. The other day, my son was out taking a walk, and someone had called the police. And so there's a boy walking by himself, and it's like, what fucking business is that of yours? I'm sure it's a white person. I hate to say that. Maybe it wasn't.
I mean, come on, we know.
What business is that is yours? There's a 10-year-old boy walking around. 10-year-old boys do that. And I thought of Tamir Rice, and I was enraged, and fearful. Still, fearful that. So so yeah, and I'm in a constant state. I remember when the officers were acquitted after Rodney King, and I was in junior high school, and I just knew. I was like, this is blatant. Of course they're going
Right.
to jail. And my dad, he didn't want to. I mean, he knew the score. He knew what was up. He
Right.
was old enough to know what was up, and but he didn't want to. He didn't want to. He didn't want to break my childhood my childhood optimism, and I was I was enraged, and my dad was just like, yeah. He was kind of like, yes, well, welcome to me in black, son.
Ain't that the truth? One of our readers says, this is Latricia Ransom. She says, for real, I'm in a perpetual state of impotent rage. And I think that for us as black folk is where that's for me, for sure, where the frustration lies. It's I can actually deal with the rage. I can handle being in a constant state of rage. What kills me is the impotence. What kills me is feeling like the rage, even our collective rage, seems to have little power behind it. In terms of shaping or reshaping policy. We are, as a nation, yeah, America is well overdue for an insurrection, but it's not this bullshit that
No.
happened in the Capitol 6 days ago. It's not that. It is due for a correction. Why is it? I mean, one of the things I think that speaks to my rage, and perhaps this is a story that I need to work on, but now that I'm thinking about it, Nana actually kind of already touches on it. I think about the fact that George Zimmerman still walks. That I think that is one of my most heated rage points, because it's not just that he walks, it's that he struts through the world. That his act of murder has made him a pop cultural famous, a figure. This motherfucker signs autographs, like when that Target practice company made they made a target that was shaped like a boy with wearing a hoodie holding an Arizona and some Skittles, and he was autographing them. And it's thinking about those kinds of things. I've even become somewhat numb to the injustice of the justice system. But when I'm like, as many motherfuckers as we have out here that will think nothing of popping a cap in somebody's ass. How is he still walking?
Yeah.
How is he still walking? And it's stuff like that. Not only how is he still walking, but how is he still walking? And even the justice system has, he has since that time abused an elderly old white man, nothing. Beat up on a white woman, nothing. Like what kind of fucking Kevlar, Teflon is he coated in that this world seems to continue to protect him?
Yeah, it's maddening and it's rage inducing. Yeah.
I don't want to focus so much on the rage. I do want to bring out some of the earlier comments, and I see that you had some things. Before we do anything, though, want to make sure that everybody's aware that they can purchase your book, Insurrections. This is not a partner bookstore per se, but as you guys know, we always like to support local bookstores, not necessarily big change, and we always like to support Black. So you can buy a copy of Insurrections at well, hold on a second. Which one is this? I don't know which bookstore this is. Let me check that link again. You can follow that link. I think that's, hold on. Who do we have? I'm going to ask my mod to put that one back up, but you can follow that link and pick up a copy. One of the lines that spoke to me, and I see somebody else called it out, was, but the words got whole worlds inside them. Was that one of the things that your dad actually said?
No.
Okay, that's you.
That's me. Yeah.
Bravo on that, bro, because it was so instantly recognizable. Those moments where you don't even have to say, it doesn't even have to be a word. Sometimes it's just in that nod. It's just in that sort of the hooded lid and the nod, and like everybody knows what's up. And there's that moment. Those words got whole worlds inside them. Took me back to the Juba story. And what you were doing with this character who was codifying and capturing the language of Cross River. Tell me a little. I mean, I know every time I ask you about the inspiration, you just be like, I just wrote the story because I wanted to write it. But tell me a little bit about what inspired the character of Juba and the sort of duality, like this grand myth of Juba, and then the person who actually was, that was in many ways a rather humble and modest figure doing some pretty righteous work. Where did that come from?
Well, before I answer that question, I want to go back to the idea of rage and impotence, because I don't that story, the story of Three Insurrections, is not about rage and it's not about impotence. The that one, the impetus behind it was love, right? A lot of times as writers, we write from negative emotions, and depression, and a lot of the stories in the book are written from those negative emotions, loneliness, sadness, and as writers, we tend to feel like that's the only thing you can pull from. I wanted to do something different. I pull from love. I pull from the love I feel for my father, and the love I feel for my brothers and my mother and everybody, and the love I feel for people whose names I'll never know because they were ripped from Africa at some point. And so that story was to me, I think the dominant feeling is not rage or impotence. The dominant feeling is love.
Absolutely. That's absolutely fair. I think we kind of got off on that track, but yeah, the story is, for want of a better word, absolutely dripping with the love that father feels towards and for his son. I also appreciated, and vice versa, I appreciated very much the sort of the tension that you establish between father and son right before the story gets told. There was almost like, I'm weird, but in my head, I almost heard like the whistling theme of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly when mother left the room, and it was it almost felt like a very still, very stiff standoff with just the sound of the hospital and these two men kind of, all right, what's going to happen now? And then for it to melt into such a beautiful, beautiful open story. Because I did get the sense that I got the sense that Neville Sampson was typically didn't say a whole lot. And so just the act alone of pouring out that much of himself was a true act of love. The way that the story presented it. And also the tenderness at the end when we get to that line that what just happened?
No, I think that's my heater went on.
Oh, okay. But the tenderness at the end when we get to that line that when they're basically when they are in revolution, they're thinking of you, that you are Cross River. You're the only one of us that is born into Cross River. You are the Cross Riverian dream. And when they think of the insurrection, it's you that they're thinking of. That had so much potency, so much poignance to it. And to me, it kind of made up for what originally, even in my first read of the intro back during wordplay, occurred for me as such a cruel joke. It was like, it's the brain damage, like, well, you got brain damage now. And I was like, what? Now, mind you, my mom says cruel shit like all the time, but it was just like, who would say that? And so I did not expect to fall in love with Neville Sampson as by the time he shows up for us at the end of the story, the way that I did from the beginning of the story. It was sort of a slow unraveling or unfolding of this character that just really made it great for me. I'm looking to see if there are any other comments that I want to pull. You obviously, there's tremendous love here. People are saying, bravo, Rion, brav fucking O. Was one that I peeped. I saw.
I gotta use that word, bro. Fucking up.
Bro, fucking ho. Kamisha Umstead says that you honored both your father and your grandfather with that story.
Yeah, wish I could have met him. Yeah.
He sounded like an absolutely fascinating figure. Was that the only story that you have of your grandfather, or were you able to pull more?
Well, my dad told me a lot. I mean, I think most of what my dad told me is in that story. He seems like a real honorable stand-up guy. And I really wish I had gotten a chance to meet him. So I'm glad I got a chance to fictionalize him a little bit. In my dad's silence, all his life, I had all these, my imagination went wild. I thought they had a tumultuous relationship,
Sure.
and I thought they had a stormy relationship. That's me as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, imagining things. But to know that they had, they had all this love between them, it was great to find out.
I can imagine. With what else was there? You mentioned, and I pulled the quote up here, that the book was originally called People in Motion, and so that title line where you're talking about the swarm, is that? So, did you rename it, or did your publishers rename it?
Yeah, my editors thought Insurrections was a better title. So the story 3 Insurrections was originally called People in Motion as well, and I submitted it to the Kenyon Review, and they accepted it. To my surprise, a literary journal that big had never accepted my work before, and they accepted it, and they said, this is good, except for maybe we should have a different title, and they suggested a bunch of them. 3 Insurrections was one of them they chose, so I said, okay, that's great. So then I submitted the book, and it was still called People in Motion, and they took the title Insurrections from 3 Insurrections. So so there was a layer of people who were smarter than me about titling.
It works. It works a lot. I think I would have enjoyed People in Motion as the title of the short story, but Insurrections, when a black man wrote the book, makes me want to pick it up. Like, for real, it just does. So that works. But now when we talked about when you talk about the swarm moving, it did take me back to the cover. Is that what inspired the flight of the birds on the cover? What was that from that story?
Yeah, I thought that was from this. Yeah.
Cool. I am, let's see, Angela Lee Raines is particularly moved by the idea of writing from love. She says that's magnificent. And I see the compliment from you earlier. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I
didn't put that one on the screen.
I'll put it. Hold on, let me find it. I feel like I don't want it to be like self-aggrandizing.
Oh, not self. That's me. That's me.
Shoot, did I lose it? Oh, here we go. And Rion Amilcar Scott said Julian is talented as fuck, and Angel Monique said he truly is.
I didn't I didn't. I didn't answer the question about Juba, and,
Yes.
and your question was where did Juba come from? Um, yeah, that story kind of unraveled, sort of organically. The the I was in a class in the beginning of the second semester of my final. I think it was my final year in grad school. The teacher asked us to write a story about a mistaken identity. So I thought back to a mistaken identity I had when I was in college. A guy, was like, you still hustling? I'm walking down the street. I'm this, scared 19-year-old. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm getting out of here because, the police think a drug deal is going down. We both getting our ass beat. So I'm out of here. So, I walked away. I caught the bus or I caught the train and went to work. And so, I thought back to that and I wrote that mistaken identity story. And I had just seen an August Wilson play. Joe Turner's Come and Gone, and there's a scene where they do this celebration dance in the word Juba. It's called Juba, and it's a West African dance that the slaves, the enslaved people had brought with them, and so I use that as a name in the story. So then later when I went back and revised it, I started thinking, who is Juba? Why did I call this guy Juba? Juba. So I know it. The first time I heard the word is a celebratory thing. So I wanted the story to be a celebration of language, celebration of the English language, particularly African American vernacular English. So I made up my own version of African American vernacular English, our own regional variation where they speak in Cross River. And I thought, so that's how the story unraveled and unfolded.
So now I'm thinking about rolling in my sixth foe. Are some of the characters in that speaking this dialect, the Cross Riverian dialect?
I'm not J.R.R. Tolkien, so I don't have a fully systemized.
You don't have like a whole lexicon off to the side.
I have to hint at it because I don't have those skills to make up. But there's certain slang words that pop up here and there. That a Cross Riverian might say. But at the same time, Cross Riverian language doesn't exist. The same way Elvish exists or Klingon exists. I don't. Right. I'm not a linguist. I'm just a storyteller.
Got you. There's so much more that I want to say. I am looking to see. I'm laughing at Latricia, who says, you're a blurred when. Yeah. Yeah, you definitely called me out. And Angel Monique saying, yeah, boy, those editors will change the name.
They just didn't think People Motion would sell. And I was like, all right, well, Insurrections is the better title. I was like, that's bold as hell. Call them a book.
It takes a lot. I think as a writer, it takes a lot to let somebody change. It's like changing your baby's name. Like, you know what? He looks like a George to me. Okay, I guess he won't get picked on if we name him George. Sure. There's so much more that I would love to ask and say, but it's starting to get a little bit late and I have to wind down. I do want to see if there are any other questions from our listeners out there. And then if there's any parting shots, things that you want to tell us, Rion. I know the last time we had a chance to speak to you, we were really, really interested in getting our hands on some Wolf tickets. As there, what are you currently working on? What's up next for you?
I'm supposed to be working on a novel. I hope nobody from my publishers is listening because I've been writing short stories. And if they are listening, yeah, I'm working on that novel. Live Right. I'm working on that novel. Live Right. So yeah, I'm working on some short stories.
Continuing in the Cross River, in the world of Cross River.
I'm always gonna write about Cross River.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm always gonna write about Cross River. There's always so much more to say until I retire.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Thank you for stopping by and sharing a moment with us. And again, everybody, if you do not yet have a copy of Insurrections, which you should have bought by now during Wordplay or when any of the other times, but if you have not, you can pick it up at Harriet's Bookshop. The link is right there. Just go to bookshop.org/books, Insurrection Stories, and there's the code right there. So for everybody who came out and who stuck it out with us this long as sort of the combined after story / story time. Thank you so much, Rion. Thank you for coming through, man. I can't wait to read what you have next. And I'm sure we'll be reading you again soon. So if you see it pop up, you are always welcome to come through anytime.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, man. I love this community, man. You create something special, and you know, thank you for helping me reclaiming my word.
For sure, reclaiming your word. And with that, y'all, I'm going to say goodnight. We're going to go ahead and hit the credits off. And this has been Storytime with Julian. We will see you next week on Tuesday. Peace.